Here. Here. Sweet. Publish. And that should be good. I think that should be good. Just gonna double check everywhere, make sure everything's fine. Yeah, nothing's going too crazy, nothing's being borked, everything's cooperating. The last thing I'd want is for me to start streaming and then suddenly, boom, nothing's working at all, and I have to like stop what I'm doing to fix it and start back over again. I don't want to do that. So that's not that much fun to do. I've done that way too many times. I'm gonna get some water. All right. Ah ha ha ha. Oh! Oh, I just popped my neck a few times. That felt good. I'm going to see if it's all working right. I'm gonna see what we got going on. Sorry. Alright. Think we're good. I think we're good to start. I think. Oh boy. I'll wait like about another 30 seconds. And we'll see if we can't get any more people to join in. And if we can't, then we'll start and we'll continue from there. And my plan is to read for the next hour or so until 9 o'clock Eastern time. And might go a little bit past that, depending on how things go. We'll see what happens. Hey Bether, welcome to the stream over on Twitch. Sitting up in my chair a little bit, getting ready, and switching to the live streaming scene. No more music, unfortunately, as we read through Eragon. Ah, gosh darn it, my seat. Alright, you guys ready to start? I've never done anything like this. I just got this idea recently, so I don't know how this is gonna go. Cause like, I'll say this, I've read books before, you know, out loud to people, but that was for like class in high school and middle school. That was never for, you know, a live stream with a lot more very judgmental people. So this is either going to go very well or it's going to go very badly. It's 50-50 shot. Let's go. Alright, so prologue. Shade of Fear. Wind howled through the night, carrying a scent that would change the world. A tall shade lifted his head and sniffed the air. He looked human, except for his crimson hair and maroon eyes. He blinked in surprise. The message had been correct. They were here. Or was it a trap? He weighed the odds. Then icily spread out. Hide behind trees and bushes. Stop whoever's coming. Or die. Around him shuffled 12 Urgles with short swords and round iron shields, painted with black symbols. They resembled men, with bowed legs and thick, brutish arms made for crushing. A pair of twisted horns grew above their small ears. The monsters hurried into the brush, grunting as they hid. Soon, the rustling quieted, and the forest was silent again. Ah, my nose. The sheer... wow, already off to a great start. Already stuttering. The shade peered around a thick tree and looked up the trail. It was too dark for any human to see, but for him, the faint moonlight was like sunshine streaming between the trees. Every detail was clear and sharp to his searching gaze. He remained unnaturally quiet, a long, pale sword in his hand. A wire-thin scratch curved down the blade. The weapon was thin enough to slip between a pair of ribs, yet stout enough to hack through the hardest armor. The Urgles could not see as well as the Shade. They groped like blind beggars, fumbling with their weapons, and now screeched, cutting through the silence. No one relaxed until the bird flew past. Then the monster shivered in the cold night. One snapped a twig with his heavy butt. Butt? Really? Boot. See? I'm alright, off to a fantastic start. We're on page 2, and I've already made like 3 mistakes. Fantastic. The Shade hissed in anger, and the Urgle shrank back, motionless. He suppressed his distaste. They smelled like fetid meat, and turned away. They were tools, nothing more. The Shade forced back his impatience as the minutes became hours. The scent must have wafted far ahead of its owners. He did not let the Urgles get up or warm themselves. He denied himself those luxuries too, and stayed behind the tree, watching the trail. Another gust of wind rushed through the forest. The smell was stronger this time. Excited, he lifted a thin lip in a snarl. "Get ready," he whispered, his whole body vibrating. The tip of his sword moved in small circles. It had taken many plots and much pain to bring himself to this moment. It would not do to lose control now. Eyes brightened under the Urgle's thick brows. The creatures gripped their weapons tighter. Ahead of them, the Shade heard a clink as something hard struck a loose stone. Faint smudges emerged from the darkness and advanced down the trail. 3 white horses with riders canted toward the ambush, their heads held high and proud, their coats rippling in the moonlight like liquid silver. Wow. Ugh. Tongue-tied. Once more. On the first horse was an elf, with pointed ears and elegantly slanted eyebrows. His build was slim but strong, like a rapier. A powerful bow was slung on his back. A sword pressed against his side opposite a quiver of arrows fletched with swan feathers. The last rider had the same fair face and angled features as the other. He carried a long spear in his right hand and a white dagger at his belt. A helm of extraordinary craftsmanship, wrought with amber and gold, rested on his head. Between these two rode a raven-haired elven lady, who surveyed her surroundings with poise. Framed by long black locks, her deep eyes shone with a driving force. Her clothes were unadorned, yet her beauty was undiminished. At her side was a sword, and on her back a long bow with a quiver. She carried in her lap a pouch that she frequently looked at, as if to reassure herself that it was still there. One of the elves spoke quietly, but the Shade could not hear what was said. The lady answered with obvious authority, and the gods switched places. The one wearing the helm took the lead, shifting his spear to a readier grip. They passed the Shade's hiding place and the first Urgles without suspicion. The Shade was already savoring his victory when the wind changed direction and swept toward the elves, heavy with the Urgle's stench. Horses snorted with alarm and tossed their heads. The riders stiffened, eyes flashing from side to side, then wheeled their mounts around and galloped away. The lady's horse surged forward, leaving her guards far behind. Forsaking their hiding, the Urgle stood and released a stream of black arrows. The Shade jumped out from behind a tree, raised his right hand, and shouted. This is where things are going to get a little bit more difficult with me trying to actually pronounce some of the words, because in this book, for those of you who don't know and haven't read it before, there's a language called the Ancient Language, and there's also the Dwarven language, and the language of the Urgles. And all of them are semi-difficult to pronounce. So you might see me occasionally flip to the back of the book for references on how to pronounce stuff, because I don't remember how to pronounce most of these words. I'm not even going to lie about that. Where's pronunciation? Oh, no, that is not telling me how to pronounce the words themselves. Well, shoot. That's not what I thought was there. Words equals judgment. You're completely right, Dether. So, let's see. I'm going to do my best to pronounce it. Shade jumped out from behind the tree, raised his right hand, and shouted, "Gajzaza!" Something like that. A red bolt flashed from his palm toward the elven lady, illuminating the trees with a bloody light. It struck her steed, and the horse toppled with a high-pitched squeal, plowing into the ground chest first. She leapt off the animal with inhuman speed, landed lightly, then glanced back to her guards. The Urgle's deadly arrows quickly brought down the 2 elves. They fell from the noble horses, blood pooling in the dirt. As the Urgles rushed to the slain elves, almost said slain dwarves, fantastic, the Shade screamed after her. She's the one I want. The monsters grunted and rushed down the trail. A cry tore from the elf's lips as she saw her dead companions. She took a step toward them, then cursed her enemies and bounded into the forest. While the Urgles crashed through the trees, the Shade climbed a piece of granite that jutted above them. From his perch, he could see all of the surrounding forest. He raised his hand and uttered, Biotk Istalre. We'll go with that. And a quarter mile section of the forest exploded into flames. Words are hard. Grimly, he burned one section after another until there was a ring of fire, a half league across, around the ambush site. The flames looked like a molten crown resting on the forest. Satisfied, he watched the ring carefully in case it should falter. The band of fire thickened, contracting the area the Urgles had to search. Suddenly, the Shade heard shouts and a coarse scream. Through the forest, he saw 3 of his charges fall in a pile, mortally wounded. He caught a glimpse of the elf running from the remaining Urgles. She fled toward the craggy piece of granite at a tremendous speed. Shade examined the ground 20 feet below, then jumped and landed nimbly in front of her. She skidded around and sped back to the trail. Black Urgle blood dripped from her sword, staining the pouch in her hand. The horned monsters came out of the forest and hemmed her in, blocking the only escape routes. Her head whipped around as she tried to find a way out. Seeing none, she drew herself up with a regal disdain. The Shade approached her with a raised hand, allowing himself to enjoy her helplessness. Get her. As Urgle surged forward, the elf pulled open the pouch, reached into it, and let it drop to the ground. In her hands was a large sapphire stone that reflected the angry light of the fires. She raised it over her head, lips forming frantic words. Desperate, Shade barked, Gajza! A ball of red flame sprang from his hand and flew toward the elf, fast as an arrow, but he was too late. A flash of emerald light briefly illuminated the forest, and the stone vanished. Then the red fire smote her, and she collapsed. The Shade howled in rage and stalked forward, flinging his sword at a tree. Passed halfway through the trunk, where it stuck, quivering. He shot 9 bolts of energy from his palm, which killed the Urgles instantly, then ripped his sword free and strode to the elf. Prophecies of revenge, spoken in a wretched language only he knew, rolled from his tongue. He clenched his thin hands and glared at the sky. The cold stars stared back, unwinking, otherworldly watches. Disgust curled his lip, before he turned back to the unconscious elf. Her beauty, which would have entranced any mortal man, held no charm for him. He confirmed that the stone was gone, then retrieved his horse from its hiding place among the trees. After tying the elf onto the saddle, he mounted the charger and made his way out of the woods. He quenched the fires in his path, but left the rest to burn. So sorry to say, but reading is boring. Just kidding, not sorry, but we'll stay to the end. Well, I appreciate that, Bether. Discovery. Eragon knelt in a bed of trampled reed glass. Wow, already. Gosh. I don't know how I'm going to do throughout the rest of this. Like, I've made so many mistakes already. Jeez. Eragon knelt in a bed of trampled reed grass and scanned the tracks with a practiced eye. The prince told him that the deer had been in the meadow only a... Tongue-tied. Happens to everyone, but it seems to happen to me a lot more than everyone else. The prince told him that the deer had been in the meadow only a half hour before. Soon they would bed down. His target, a small doe with a pronounced limp in her left forefoot, was still with the herd. He was amazed she had made it so far without a wolf or bear catching her. The sky was clear and dark, and a slight breeze stirred the air. A silvery cloud drifted over the mountains and surrounded him, its edges glowing with ruddy light cast from the harvest moon cradled between 2 peaks. Streams flowed down the mountains from stolid glaciers and glistening snow peaks. I thought that would be solid glaciers for some reason. Words are even harder. There's a spider in your headphones. You're lying. That's just my hair. Don't do that, Bether. That's actually mean. I don't like you. Let's see, where was I? A brooding mist crept along the valley's floor, almost thick enough to obscure his feet. Eragon was 15, less than a year from manhood. Dark eyebrows rested above his intense brown eyes. His clothes were worn from work. A hunting knife with a bone handle was sheathed at his belt, and a buckskin tube protected his yew-bow from the mist. He carried a wood-framed pack. The deer had led him deep into the spine, a range of untamed mountains that extended up and down the land of Alagacia. Strange tales and men often came from those mountains, usually boding ill. Despite that, Eragon did not fear the spine. He was the only hunter near Carvajal who dared track game deep into its craggy recesses. It was the third night of the hunt, and his food was half gone. If he did not fill the dough, he'd be forced to return home empty-handed. His family needed the meat for the rapidly approaching winter, and could not afford to buy it in Carvajal. Eragon stood with quiet assurance in the dusky moonlight, and strode into the forest toward a glen where he was sure the deer would rest. Trees blocked the sky from view, and cast feathery shadows on the ground. He looked at the tracks only occasionally. He knew the way. At the glen, he strung his bow with a sure touch, then drew 3 arrows and nocked one, holding the others in his left hand. The moonlight revealed 20 or so motionless lumps where the deer lay in the grass. The doe he wanted was at the edge of the herd, and left forward stretched out awkwardly. Eragon slowly crept closer, keeping the bow ready. All his work of the past 3 days had led to this moment. He took a last steadying breath, and an explosion shattered the night. The herd bolted. Eragon lunged forward, racing through the grass as a fiery wind surged past his cheek. He slid to a stop, and loosed an arrow at the bounding doe. It missed by a finger's breadth, and hissed into the darkness. He cursed and spun around, instinctively nocking an arrow. Behind him, where the deer had been, smoldered a large circle of grass and trees. Meaning the pine needles stood bare. Got ahead of myself a little bit. Beneath the pines stood bare of their needles. Grass outside the charring was flattened. God dang it. Words are really hard sometimes. Wisps of smoke curled in the air, carrying a burnt smell. In the center of the blast radius lay a polished blue stone. Getting ahead of myself again. Mist snaked across the scorched area and swirled insubstantial tendrils over the stone. Eragon watched for danger for several long minutes, but the only thing that moved was the mist. Cautiously, he released the tension from his bow and moved forward. Moonlight cast him in pale shadow as he stopped before the stone. He nudged it with an arrow, then jumped back. Nothing happened, so he warily picked it up. Ah, yes, picking up a strange blue stone after it appeared explosively in front of you. Very smart. Let that be a lesson, y'all. Pick up strange blue stones that you find on the ground that might appear from an explosion. It's always good and safe to do. Nature had never polished a stone as smooth as this one. Its flawless surface was a dark blue, except for thin veins of white that spiderwebbed across it. The stone was cool and frictionless under his fingers, like hardened silk. Oval and about a foot long, it weighed several pounds, though it felt lighter than it should have. Eragon found the stone both beautiful and frightening. Where did it come from? Does it have a purpose? Then a more disturbing thought came to him. Was it sent here by accident? Or am I meant to have it? If he had learned anything from the old stories, it's to treat magic, and those who used it, with great caution. If you've heard of 3D sound, I suggest listening to the Tucker Zone. You guys use something like earbuds, not headphones. What do you mean? Look, I don't have earbuds, I just have headphones because I prefer over-ear headphones. Because I just like the sound quality a lot better. Where was I? Let's see. But what should I do with the stone? It would be tiresome to carry, and there was a chance it was dangerous. Might be better to leave it behind. A flicker of indecision ran through him, and he almost dropped it, but something stayed his hand. At the very least, it might pay for some food, he decided with a shrug, tucking the stone into his pack. The glen was too exposed to make a safe camp, so he slipped back into the forest and spread his bedroll beneath the upturned roots of a fallen tree. After a cold dinner of bread and cheese, he wrapped himself in blankets and fell asleep, pondering what had occurred. Ugh. Gonna get a drink of water real quick. Ugh. The sun rose the next morning with a glorious configuration of blue and yellow. Or blue and yellow. Pink and yellow. Why did I say blue? Wow. Let's for heavens, but that will do if you ever listen to... I'll have to consider it sometime. Sun rose the next morning with the glorious conflagration of pink and yellow. They rose fresh and sweet. Or fresh, sweet, and very cold. Wow. I'm just doing well all of a sudden. Jeez. Are you pups enjoying the reading? No, you can't really care at all. You're passed out behind me. Like, hold on. Let me just show them for a moment. They're just passed out. They're fast asleep. Ella's the only one who's somewhat awake. And she's just barely awake. She keeps almost nodding off back to sleep every time I go to say something to her. Her eyes just jut open again. They're both sleepy as hell. Anyways, back to this. The air was fresh, sweet, and very cold. Ice edged the streams, and small pools were completely frozen over. After breakfast of porridge, Eragon returned to the glen and examined the charred area. The morning light revealed no new details, so he started for home. The rough game trail was faintly worn and, in places, non-existent. Because it had been forged by animals, it often backtracked and took long detours. Yet for all its flaws, it was still the fastest way out of the mountains. Doing well is not the word. You hush, Venther. The spine was one of the only places that King Galbatorix could not call his own. Stories were still told about how half his army disappeared after marching to its ancient forest. Cloud of misfortune and bad luck seemed to hang over it. Though the trees grew tall and the sky shone brightly, few people could stay in the spine for long without suffering an accident. Eragon was one of those few. Not through any particular gift, it seemed to him, but because of persistent vigilance and sharp reflexes. He had hiked in the mountains for years, and he was still wary of them. Every time he thought they had surrendered their secrets, something happened to upset his understanding of them, like the stone's appearance. He kept up a brisk pace, and the lake steadily disappeared. In late evening, he arrived at the edge of a precipitous ravine. The Enora River rushed by far below, heading to Palanca Valley. Gorged with hundreds of tiny streams, the river was a brute force, battling against the rocks and shoulders that barred its way. Shoulders that barred its way, really? Boulders that barred its way. A low rumble filled the air. He camped in a thicket near the ravine and watched the moon rise before going to bed. It grew colder over the next day and a half. Eragon traveled quickly and saw little of the wary wildlife. A bit past noon, he heard the Galda Falls, blanketing everything with the dull sound of 1,000 splashes. The trail led him onto a moist slate outcropping, which the river sped past, filling itself into empty air and down mossy cliffs. Before him lay Palancar Valley, exposed like an unrolled map. The base of the Galda Falls, more than a half-mile below, was the northernmost point of the valley. A little ways from the falls was Carvajal, a cluster of brown buildings. White smoke rose from the chimneys, defiant of the wilderness around it. At this height, farms were small, square patches no bigger than the end of his finger. Land around them was tan or sandy, where dead grass swayed in the wind. The Enora River wound from the falls towards Palancar's southern end, reflecting great strips of sunlight. Far in the distance, it flowed past the village Thorusofer and the lonely mountain Utgard. Beyond that, he knew only that it turned north and ran to the sea. After a pause, Eragon left the outcropping and started down the trail, grimacing at the descent. When he arrived at the bottom, soft dusk was creeping over everything, blurring colors and shapes into gray masses. Carval's lights shimmered nearby in the twilight. The houses cast long shadows. Aside from Thorusofer, Carvajal was the only village in Palancar Valley. The settlement was secluded and surrounded by harsh, beautiful land. Few traveled here except merchants and trappers. The village was composed of stout log buildings with low roofs, some thatched, others shingled. Smoke billowed from the chimneys, giving the air a woody smell. Buildings had wide porches where people gathered to talk and conduct business. Occasionally, a window bright as a candle or lamp was lit. Eragon heard men talking loudly in the evening air while wives scurried to fetch their husbands, scolding them for being late. Eragon wove his way between the houses to the butcher's shop, a broad, thick-beamed building. Overhead, the chimney belched black smoke. He pushed the door open. The spacious room was warm and well lit by a fire snapping in the stone fireplace. A bare counter stretched across the far side of the room. The floor was strewn with loose straw. Everything was scrupulously clean, as if the owner spent his leisure time digging in obscure crannies for minuscule pieces of filth. Behind the counter stood the butcher Sloan. Small man, he wore a cotton shirt and a long, blood-stained smock. An impressive array of knives swung from his belt. He had a sallow, pock-marked face, and his black eyes were suspicious. He polished the counter with a ragged cloth. Sloane's mouth twisted as Eragon entered. "Well, the mighty hunter joins the rest of us mortals. How many did you bag this time?" "None," was Eragon's curt reply. He had never liked Sloane. The butcher always treated him with disdain, as if he were something unclean. A widower, Sloane seemed to care for only one person, his daughter Katrina, on whom he doted. "I'm amazed," said Sloane with affected astonishment. He turned his back on Eragon and scraped something off the wall. And that's your reason for coming here? Yes, admitted Eragon comfortably. If that's the case, let's see your money. Sloane tapped his fingers and Eragon shifted his feet and remained silent. Come on, either you have it or you don't. Which is it? I don't really have any money, but I do. What? No money? The butcher cut him off sharply. And you expect to buy meat. Are the other merchants giving away their wares? Should I just hand you the goods without charge? Besides, he said abruptly, it's late. Come back tomorrow with money. I'm closed for the day. Eragon glared at him. I can't wait until tomorrow, Sloane. It'll be worth your while, though. Found something to pay you with. He pulled out the stone with a flourish and set it gently on the scarred counter, where it gleamed light from the dancing flames. Stole it, is more likely, muttered Sloane, leaning forward with an interested expression. Ignoring the comment, Eragon asked, will this be enough? Sloane picked up the stone and gauged its weight speculatively. He ran his hands over its smoothness and inspected the white veins. Calculating look, he set it down. It's pretty, but how much is it worth? I don't know, admitted Eragon, but no one would have gone to the trouble of shaping it unless it had some value. Obviously, said Sloane with exaggerated patience. But how much value? Since you don't know, I suggest that you find a trader who does. Take my offer of 3 crowns. That's words. That's a miser's bargain. It must be worth at least 10 times that, protested Eragon. 3 crowns would not even buy enough meat to last a week. Sloane shrugged. If you don't like my offer, wait until the traders arrive. Either way, I'm tired of this conversation. The traders were a nomadic group of merchants and entertainers who visited Carvajal every spring and winter. They bought whatever excess the villagers and local farmers had managed to grow or make, and sold what they needed to live through another year. Seeds, animals, fabric, and supplies like salt and sugar. Eragon did not win. I was doing so well, too, for a time. And then I started making mistakes, and then it kind of snowballed from there. But Eragon did not want to wait until they arrived. It could be a while. His family needed the meat now. Fine, I accept. He snapped. Good. I'll get you the meat. Not that it matters, but where did you find this? 2 nights ago in the spine. Get out, demanded Sloane, pushing the stone away. He stomped fiercely to the end of the counter and started scrubbing old bloodstains off the knife. Why? Asked Eragon. He drew the stone closer, as if to protect it from Sloane's wrath. I won't deal with anything you bring back from those damned mountains. Take your sorcerer's stone elsewhere. Sloane's hand suddenly slipped, and he cut a finger on the knife, but he seemed not to notice. He continued to scrub, staining the blade with fresh blood. You refuse to sell to me. Yes, unless you pay with coins, Sloane growled, and hefted the knife, sidling away. Go, before I make you. The door behind them slammed open. Eragon rolled around, ready for more trouble. In stomped Horst, a hulking man. Sloane's daughter, Katrina, a tall girl of 16, trailed behind him with a determined expression. Eragon was surprised. So you're reading the book, or are you reading chat? Primarily trying to read the book. Let me get some... You know what? I'm going to get it. No. I was going to grab a cough drop because my throat was kind of starting to feel a little sore, but if I do that, it might just make things a little bit more difficult having a cough drop in my mouth. Let's see, where was I? Eragon was surprised to see her. She usually absented herself from any arguments involving her father. Sloane glanced at them warily, then started to accuse Eragon. He won't. Quiet, announced Horst in a rumbling voice, cracking his knuckles at the same time. He was Carvajal Smith, as his thick neck and scarred leather apron attested. His powerful arms were visible... Words. Tongue-tied. Fun. His powerful arms were bare to the elbow. A great expanse of hairy, muscular chest was visible through the top of his shirt. A black beard, carelessly trimmed, roiled and knotted like his jaw muscles. Sloane, what have you done now? Nothing. He gave Eragon a murderous gaze, then spat. This boy came in here and started badgering me. I asked him to leave, but he won't budge. I even threatened him, and he still ignored me. Sloane seemed to shrink as he looked at Horst. Is this true? Demanded the smith. No, replied Eragon. I offered this stone as payment for some meat, and he accepted. When I told him that I'd found it in the spine, he refused to even touch it. What difference does it make where it came from? Horst looked at the stone curiously, then returned his attention to the butcher. Why won't you trade with him, Sloane? I have no love for the spine myself, but if it's a question of the stone's worth, I'll back it with my own money. The question hung in the air for a moment. Then Sloane licked his lips and said, This is my own store. I can do whatever I want. Katrina stepped out from behind Horst and tossed back her auburn hair like a spray of molten copper. Father, Eragon is willing to pay. give him the meat, and then we can have supper. Sloane's eyes narrowed dangerously. Go back to the house. This is none of your business. I said, go! Katrina's face hardened. Then she marched out of the room with a stiff back. Eragon watched with disapproval, but dared not interfere. Horst tugged at his beard before saying reproachfully, Fine, you can deal with me. What are you going to get, Eragon? His voice reverberated through the room. As much as I could. Horst pulled out a purse and counted out a pile of coins. Give me your best roast and steak. Steaks. Blech, words. Make sure that it's enough to fill Eragon's pack. The butcher hesitated, his gaze darting between Horst and Eragon. Not selling to me would be a very bad idea, stated Horst. Glowering venomously, Sloane slipped into the back room. Frenzy of chopping, wrapping, and low cursing reached them. After several uncomfortable minutes, he returned with an armful of wrapped meat. His face was expressionless as he accepted Horst's money, then proceeded to clean his knife, pretending that they were not there. Horst scooped up the meat and walked outside. Eragon hurried behind him, carrying his pack and the stone. His crisp night air rolled over their faces, refreshing after the stuffy shop. Thank you, Horst. Uncle Gar will be pleased. Horst laughed quietly. Don't thank me. I wanted to do that for a long time. Sloane's a vicious troublemaker. It does him good to be humbled. Katrina heard what was happening and ran to fetch me. Good thing I came. Two of you were almost at blows. Unfortunately, I doubt I'll serve you or any of your family the next time you go in there, even if you do have coins. Why did he explode like that? We've never been friendly, but he's always taken our money. I've never seen him treat Katrina that way, said Eragon, opening the top of the pack. Or shrugged. Ask your uncle. He knows more about it than I do. Eragon stuffed the meat into his pack. Now I have one more reason to hurry home. Solve this mystery. Here, this is rightfully yours. You proffered the stone. Horst chuckled. No, you keep your strange rock. As for payment, Albrecht, I think that's how you say his name, plans to leave for Feinster next spring. He wants to become a master smith. I'm going to need an assistant. You can come and work off the debt on your spare days. Eragon bowed slightly, delighted. Horst had two sons, Albrecht and Baldur, both of whom worked in his forge. Taking one's place was a generous offer. Again, thank you. I look forward to working with you. He was glad that there was a way for him to pay Horst. His uncle would never accept charity. Then Eragon remembered what his cousin had told him before he had left on the hunt. Warren wanted me to give Katrina a message, but since I can't, can you get it to her? Of course. He wants to know that I'll come into town as soon as the merchants arrive, and that he will see her then. That all? Eragon was slightly embarrassed. No. He also wants to know that she's the most beautiful girl he has ever seen, and that he thinks of nothing else. Horst's face broke into a broad grin, and he winkled. What the hell? He winked at Eragon. Getting serious, isn't he? Yes, sir, Eragon asked. God, I can't. I've been thrown off. Words are not very good. How true. How true, Vether. Ugh. I need to take a moment and put a cough drop in. Oh, man. Reading from a book for an hour straight is not easy. And I've seen people read books for an inordinate amount of time in order to finish the entire thing in one stream. Impressive thing. Reading aloud is not the easiest thing to do, let me tell you. It's fraught with many perils. Chief among them, the symptom known as tongue-tied. Or is it more of a plague? Yes, sir, Eragon answered with a quick smile. Could you also give her my thanks? It was nice of her to stand up to her father for me. Hope that she isn't punished because of it. Roran would be furious if I got her into trouble. I wouldn't worry about it. Son doesn't know that she called me, so I doubt he'll be too hard on her. Before you go, will you sup with us? I'm sorry, but I can't. Garrett was expecting me, said Eragon, tying up the top of the pack. He hoisted onto his back and started down the road, raising his hand in farewell. The meat slowed him down, but he was eager to be home, and a renewed vigor filled his steps. The village ended abruptly, and left its warm lights behind. The pearlescent moon peeked over the mountains, bathing the land in a ghostly reflection of daylight. Everything looked bleached and flat. Near the end of his journey, he turned off the road, which continued south. The simple path led straight through the waist-high grass and up a knoll, almost hidden by the shadows of protective elm trees. He crested the hill and saw a gentle light shining from his home. The house had a shingled roof and a brick chimney. Eaves hung over the whitewashed walls. And shadow. Well, you aren't coughing, you're failing. My throat's getting sore. Hush, Beth. I swear to God. Let's see. Eaves hung over the whitewashed walls, shadowing the ground below. One side of the enclosed porch was filled with split wood, ready for the fire. A jumble of farm tools cluttered the other side. The house had been abandoned for half a century when they moved in after Garrow's wife, Marian, died. It was 10 miles from Carvajal, farther than anyone else's. People considered the distance dangerous because the family could not rely on help from the village in times of trouble. But Eragon's uncle would not listen. 100 feet from the house, in a dull-colored barn, lived 2 horses, Burka and Brug, with chickens and a cow. Sometimes there was also a pig, but they'd been unable to afford one this year. A wagon sat wedged between the stalls. On the edge of the fields, a thick line of trees traced along the Nora River. He saw a light move behind a window as he wearily reached the porch. Uncle, it's Eragon. Let me in. A small shutter slid back for a second, and done blah blah blah. Then the door swung inward. Ah. It's nice to see that there are occasional problems over on Twitch and YouTube with the video. Oh, OBS and my webcam, you never cease to not be a pain in the butt. Let's see. Garrett stood with his hand on the door. His worn clothes hung on him like rags on a stick frame. A lean, hungry face with intense eyes gazed out from under graying hair. He looked like a man who had been partly mummified before it was discovered that he was still alive. Roran's sleeping, was his answer to Eragon's inquiring glance. A lantern flickered on a wood table so old that the grain stood up in tiny ridges like a giant fingerprint. Near a wood stove were rows of cooking utensils tacked onto the wall with homemade nails. The second door opened to the rest of the house. The floor was made of boards polished smooth by years of tramping feet. Eragon pulled off his pack and took out the meat. "What's this? Did you buy meat? Where did you get the money?" asked his uncle harshly as he saw the wrapped packages. Eragon took a breath before answering. "No, Horse bought it for us. You let him pay for it? I told you before, I won't beg for our food. If we can't feed ourselves, we might as well move into town. Before you can turn around twice, they'll be sending us used clothes and asking if we'll be able to get through the winter." Garrow's face paled with anger. "I didn't accept charity," snapped Eragon. "Horse agreed to let me work off the debt this spring. Need someone to help him because Albric is going away." "And where will you get the time to work for him? Are you going to ignore all the things that need to be done here?" Eragon asked, forcing his voice down. Eragon hung his bow and quiver on hooks beside the front door. "I don't know how I'll do it," he said irritably. "Besides, found something that could be worth some money." He set the stone on the table. Garrow bowed over it, a hungry look on his face becoming ravenous, and his fingers moved with a strange twitch. "You found this in the spine." "Yes," Eragon said. He explained what had happened, and to make matters worse, I lost my best arrow. I'll have to make more before long. He stared at the stone in the near darkness. "How's the weather?" asked his uncle, lifting the stone. His hands tightened around it like he was afraid it would suddenly disappear. "Cold," it was Eragon's reply. "It didn't snow, but it froze each night." Garrow looked worried by the news. "Tomorrow you have to help Roran finish harvesting the barley. If you can get the squash picked too, the frost won't bother us." He passed the stone to Eragon. "Here, keep it. When the traders come, we'll find out what it's worth. Selling is probably the best thing to do. The less we're involved with magic, the better. Why did Horse pay for the meat?" It took only a moment for Eragon to explain his argument with Sloan. "I just don't understand what angered him so." Garrow shrugged. "Sloan's wife, Esmira, went over the Agalda Falls a year before they were brought here. He hasn't been near the spine since, nor had anything to do with it. But that's no reason to refuse payment. I think he wanted to give you trouble." Eragon swayed blearily and said, "It's good to be back." Garrow's eyes softened, and he nodded. Eragon stumbled to his room, pushed the stone under his bed, then fell onto the mattress. Home. For the first time since before the hunt, he relaxed completely as sleep overtook him. Dragon Tales. At dawn, the sun's rays streamed through the window, warming Eragon's face. Rubbing his eyes, he sat up on the edge of the bed. The pine floor was cold under his feet. He stretched his sore legs and rubbed his back, yawning. Beside the bed was a row of shelves covered with objects he had collected. There were twisted pieces of wood, odd bits of shells, rocks that had broken to reveal shiny interiors, and strips of dry grass tied into knots. His favorite item was a root so convoluted, never tired of looking at it. The rest of the room was bare, except for a small dresser and nightstand. He pulled on his boots and stared at the floor, thinking. This was a special day. It was near this very hour, 16 years ago, that his mother Selena had come home to Carvalho alone and pregnant. She had been gone for 6 years, living in the cities. When she returned, she wore expensive clothes, and her hair was bound by a net of pearls. She had sought out her brother, Gero, and asked to stay with him until the baby arrived. Within 5 months, her son was born, and everyone was shocked when Selena tearfully begged Gero and Marion to raise him. When they asked why, she only wept and said, I must. Her pleas had grown increasingly desperate until they finally agreed. She named him Eragon, then departed the next morning and never returned. What angered him is your... What? I'm confused by what you said about there. What angered him is your reading. Oh. That took me a moment too long to understand what you're saying. I hate you, Ether. You bastard. It's not that bad. I haven't read a book aloud since high school / middle school. So, like, cut me some slack over here. Where was I? Eragon still remembered how he felt when Marion told him the story before she died. The realization that Gero and Marion were not his real parents had disturbed him greatly. Things that had been permanent and unquestionable were suddenly thrown into doubt. Eventually he had learned to live with it, but he always had a nagging suspicion that he had not been good enough for his mother. I'm sure there was a good reason for what she did. I only wish I knew what it was. One other thing bothered him. Who was his father? Selena had told no one. Whoever it might be had never come looking for Eragon. He wished that he knew who it was, if only to have a name. It would be nice to know his heritage. He sighed and went to the nightstand, where he splashed his face, shivering as the water ran down his neck. Refreshed, he retrieved the stone from under the bed and set it on a shelf. The morning light caressed it, throwing a warm shadow on the wall. He touched it one more time, and hurried to the kitchen, eager to see his family. Gero and Roran were already there, eating chicken. As Eragon greeted them, Roran stood with a grin. Roran was 2 years older than Eragon, muscular, sturdy, and careful with his movements. Could not have been closer even if they had been real brothers. Roran smiled. I'm glad you're back. How's the trip? Hard, replied Eragon. Did Uncle tell you what happened? He helped himself to a piece of chicken, which he devoured hungrily. No, said Roran. The story was quickly told. At Roran's insistence, Eragon left his food to show him the stone. This elicited a satisfactory amount of awe, but Roran soon asked nervously, were you able to talk with Katrina? No. There was an opportunity after the argument with Sloane. She'll expect you when the traders come, however. I gave the message to Horst. He will get it to her. You told Horst? Said Roran incredulously. That was private. If I want everyone to know about it, then I could have built a bonfire and used smoke signals to communicate. If Sloane finds out, he won't let me see her again. Horst will be discreet, assured Eragon. He won't let anyone fall prey to Sloane, least of all you. Roran seemed unconvinced, but argued no more. They returned to their meals in the taciturn presence of Gero. When the last bites were finished, all three went to work in the field. The sun was cold and pale, providing little comfort. Under its watchful eye, the last of the barley was stored in the barn. They gathered prickly vine squash, then the rutabagas, beets, peas, turnips, and beans, which they packed into the root cellar. After hours of labor, they stretched their cramped muscles, pleased that the harvest was finished. The following days were spent pickling, salting, shelling, and preparing the food for winter. 9 days after Eragon's return, a vicious blizzard blew out of the mountains and settled over the valley. I was going to move the mic a little bit closer, but kind of can't because of that. Because I like how it's set up, and I don't want to mess with it. The snow came down in great sheets, blanketing the countryside in white. They only dared leave the house for firewood and feed the animals, for they feared getting lost in the howling wind and featureless landscape. They spent their time huddled over the stove as gusts rattled the heavy window shutters. Days later, the storm finally passed, revealing an alien world of snow or soft white drifts. I'm afraid the traders may not come this year with conditions this bad. They're late as it is. Give them a chance and wait before going to Carvalho. If they don't show soon, we'll have to buy any spare supplies from the townspeople. His countenance was resigned. They grew anxious as the days crept by without sign of the traders. Talk was sparse, and depression hung over the house. On the 8th morning, Warren walked to the road and confirmed that the traders had not yet passed. The day was spent readying for the trip into Carver Hall, scrounging with grim expressions for saleable items. That evening, out of desperation, Warren checked the road again. He found deep ruts cut into the snow, with numerous hoofprints between them. Elated, he ran back to the house whipping, bringing new life to their preparations. They packed their surplus produce into the wagon before sunrise. Eragon. Words. Garrow put the year's money in a leather pouch that he carefully fastened to his belt. Eragon set the wrapped stone between the bags of grain so it would not roll when the wagon hit bumps. After a hasty breakfast, they harnessed the horses and cleared a path to the road. Traders' wagons had already broken the rifts, which sped their progress. By noon, they could see Carver Hall. In daylight, it was a small earthy village filled with shouts and laughter. Traders made camp in an empty field on the outskirts of town. Groups of wagons, tents, and fires randomly spread across it, spots of color against the snow. Troubadours' tents were garishly decorated. A steady stream of people linked the camp to the town. Crowds turned around a line of bright tents and booths clogging the main street. Horses whinnied at the noise. The snow had been pounded flat, giving it a glassy surface. Elsewhere, bonfires had melted it. Roasted hazelnuts added a rich aroma to the smells wafting around them. Garrow parked the wagon and picketed the horses, then drew coins from his pouch. Get yourself some treats. Warren, do what you want, only be at horse in time for supper. Eragon, bring that stone and come with me. Eragon grinned at Warren and pocketed the money, already planning on how to spend it. Warren departed immediately with a determined expression on his face. Garrow led Eragon to the throng, shouldering his way through the bustle. Women were buying cloth, while nearby their husbands examined a new latch, hook, or tool. Children ran up and down the road, shrieking with excitement. Knives were displayed here, spices there. Pots were laid out in shiny rows next to leather harnesses. Eragon stared at the traders curiously. They seemed less prosperous than last year. The children had a frightened, wary look, and their clothes were patched. The gaunt men carried swords and daggers with a new familiarity, and even the women had poniards belted at their waists. What had happened to make them like this? Why are they so late? Wondered Eragon. He remembered the traders as being full of good cheer. There was none of that now. Garrow pushed down the street, searching for Murloc, a trader who specialized in odd trinkets and pieces of jewelry. He found him behind a booth, displaying brooches, how you say that, brooches, jeez, I'm frickin' crow, to a group of women. As each new piece was revealed, exclamations of admiration followed. Eragon guessed that more than a few purses would soon be depleted. Murloc seemed to flourish and grow every time his wares were complimented. He wore a goatee, held himself with ease, and seemed to regard the rest of the world with slight contempt. The excited group prevented Garrow and Eragon from getting near the trader, so they settled on a step and waited. As soon as Murloc was unoccupied, they hurried over. What might you sirs want to look at? Asked Murloc. An amulet or a trinket for a lady? The trolley pulled out a delicately carved silver rose of excellent workmanship. Polished metal caught Eragon's attention, and he eyed it appreciatively. The trader continued. Not even 3 crowns. Those come all the way from the famed craftsmen of Bellatona. Garrow spoke in a quiet voice. We weren't looking to buy, but to sell. Murloc immediately covered the rose and looked at them with new interest. I see. Maybe if this item is of any value, you'd like to trade it for 1 or 2 of these exquisite pieces. He paused for a moment, while Eragon and his uncle stood uncomfortably, then continued. You did bring words. You did bring the object of consideration. We have it, but we'd rather show it to you elsewhere, said Garrow in a firm voice. Murloc raised an eyebrow, but spoke smoothly. In that case, let me invite you to my tent. He gathered up his wares and gently laid them in an iron-bound chest, which he locked. Then he ushered them up the street and into the temporary camp. They wound between the wagons to a tent removed from the rest of the traders. It was crimson at the top and sable at the bottom, with thin triangles of colors stabbing into each other. Murloc untied the opening and swung the flap to one side. Small trinkets and strange pieces of furniture, such as a round bed and 3 seats carved from tree stumps, filled the tent. A gnarled dagger with a ruby in the pommel rested on a white cushion. Tell your family to replace that smoke detector battery. Chirp. Yeah. You're not entirely wrong with that, Crispy. It annoys the hell out of me too. I meant to buy batteries when I was at work yesterday, but I didn't. So, whoops. Small trinkets and strange pieces of... Nope, I already read that. Murloc closed the flap and turned to them. Please seat yourselves. When they had, he said, now show me why we are meeting in private. Eragon unwrapped the stone and set it between the two men. Murloc reached for it with a gleam in his eye, then stopped and asked, May I? When Garrow indicated his approval, Murloc picked it up. He put the stone in his lap and reached to one side for a thin box. Opened it. Ugh, hold on. I'm getting tongue-tied again. I'm drinking some water. Opened, it revealed a large set of copper scales, which he set on the ground. After weighing the stone, he scrutinized its surface under a jeweler's glass. Tapped it gently with a wooden mallet, drew the point of a tiny clear stone over it. He measured its length and diameter, then recorded the figures on a scale. He considered the results for a while. Do you know what this is worth? No, admitted Garrow. His cheek twitched, and he shifted uncomfortably on the seat. Murloc grimaced. Unfortunately, neither do I. I can tell you this much. The white veins are the same material as the blue that surrounds them, only a different color. What that material might be, though, I haven't a clue. It's harder than any rock I have seen, harder even than diamond. Whoever shaped it used tools I've never seen, or magic. Also, it's hollow. What? Exclaimed Garrow. An irritated edge crept into Murloc's voice. Did you ever hear a rock sound like this? He grabbed the dagger from the cushion and slapped the stone with the flat of the blade. A pure note filled the air, then faded away smoothly. Eragon was alarmed, afraid the stone had been undamaged. Murloc tilted the stone toward them. You'll find no scratches or blemishes where the dragger struck. I doubt it could do anything to harm the stone, even if I took a hammer to it. Nicely done, Lincoln069. Welcome to the stream. How are you doing today? See, Murloc tilted the stone toward them. You'll find no scratches when the dragger struck. I doubt it could do anything. I'm familiar. Nope, that's where I was. Garrow crossed his arms with a reserved expression. A wall of silence surrounded him. Eragon was puzzled. I knew that the stone appeared in the spine through magic, but made by magic? What for and why? He blurted, but what is it worth? I can't tell you that, said Murloc in a pained voice. I'm sure there are people who would pay dearly to have it, but none of them are in Carvajal. You have to go to the southern cities to find a buyer. It's a curiosity for most people, not an item to spend money on when practical things are needed. Garrow stared at the tent, sitting like a gambler calculating the odds. Will you buy it? The trader answered instantly. It's not worth the risk. I might be able to find a wealthy buyer during my spring travels, but I can't be certain. Even if I did, you wouldn't be paid until I return next year. No, you'll have to find someone else to trade with. I am curious, however. Why did you insist on talking to me in private? Eragon put the stone away before answering. Because. He glanced at the man, wondering if he'd explode like Sloane. Found this in the spine. Folks around here don't like that. Murloc gave him a startled look. Do you know why my fellow merchants and I were late this year? Eragon shook his head. Our wanderings have been dogged with misfortune. Chaos seems to rule Algasia. We could not avoid illness, attacks, and the most cursed black luck. Because of Varden's attacks have increased, Galbatorix has forced cities to send more soldiers to the borders, men who are needed to combat the Urgles. The brutes have been migrating southeast, toward the dark Hadarek desert. No one knows why, and it wouldn't concern us, except that they're passing through populated areas. They've been spotted on roads and near cities. Worst of all are reports of a shade. The stories are unconfirmed. Not many people survive such an encounter. Why haven't we heard of this? Cried Eragon. Because, said Murloc grimly, it only began a few months ago. Whole villages have been forced to move because Urgles destroyed their fields, and starvation threatens. Nonsense, growled Garrow. We haven't seen any Urgles. The only one around here has its horns mounted in Mullen's Tavern. Murloc arched an eyebrow. Maybe so. But this is a small village hidden by mountains. It's not surprising that you've escaped notice. However, I wouldn't expect that to last. I only mention this because strange things are happening here as well if you found such a stone in the spine. That sobering statement, he bid them farewell with a bow and a slight smile. Garrow headed back to Carvajal with Eragon trailing behind. What do you think? Asked Eragon. I'm going to get more information before I make up my mind. Take the stone back to the wagon, then do what you want. I'll meet with you for dinner at Horse. Eragon dodged through the crowd and happily dashed back to the wagon. Trading would take his uncle hours, time that he planned to enjoy fully. He hid the stone under the bags, and set out into town with a cocky stride. He walked from one booth to another, evaluating the goods with a buyer's eye, despite his meager supply of coins. When he talked to the merchants, they confirmed what Murloc had said about the instability in Algasia. Over and over, the message was repeated. Last year's security has deserted us. New dangers have appeared, and nothing is safe. Later in the day, he bought 3 sticks of malt candy and a small piping hot cherry pie. Hot food felt good after hours of standing in the snow. He licked the sticky syrup from his fingers regretfully, wishing for more, and sat on the edge of a porch and nibbled a piece of candy. 2 boys from Carvel Hall wrestled nearby, but he felt no inclination to join them. As the day descended into late afternoon, the traders took their business into people's homes. Eragon was impatient for evening, and the troubadours would come out to tell stories and perform tricks. He loved hearing about magic, gods, and if they were especially lucky, the dragon riders. Carvel had its own storyteller, Brom, a friend of Eragon's, but his tales grew old over the years, whereas the troubadours always had new ones they listened to eagerly. Eragon had just broken off an icicle from the other side of the porch when he spotted Sloane nearby. Butcher had not seen him, so Eragon ducked his head and bolted around the corner toward Moan's tavern. Why did I say cavern? Blah, words. The inside was hot and filled with greasy smoke from sputtering tallow candles. The shiny black earl arms, their twisted span as great as its outstretched arms, were mounted over the door. The bar was long and low, with a stack of staves on one end for customers to carve. Morn tended the bar, his sleeves rolled up to his elbows. The bottom half of his face was short and mashed, as if he had rested his chin on a grinding wheel. People crowded solid oak tables and listened to 2 traders who had finished their business early and had come in for beer. Morn looked up from a mug he was cleaning. "Eragon, good to see you here. Where's your uncle?" "Buying," said Eragon with a shrug. "He's going to be a while." "And Roran, is he here?" asked Morn as he swiped the cloth through another mug. "Yes, no sick elves keep him back this year." Good. Eragon gestured at the 2 traders. "Who are they?" "Grain buyers. They bought everyone's seed at ridiculously low prices. Now they're telling wild stories, expecting us to believe them." Eragon understood why Morn was so upset. People need that money. We can't get by without it. "What kind of stories?" Morn snorted. "They say the Varden has formed a pact with the Urgles and are massing an army to attack us. Supposedly, it's only through the grace of our king that we've been protected for so long. As if Galbatorgs would care if we burned to the ground. Go listen to them. I have enough on my hands without explaining their lies." The first trader filled a chair with his enormous girth. His every movement caused it to protest loudly. There was no hint of hair on his face. His pudgy hands were baby smooth, and he had pouting lips that curled petulantly as he sipped from a flagon. The second man had a florid face. The skin around his jaw was dry and corpulent, filled with lumps of hard fat, like cold butter gone rancid. Contrasted with his neck and jowls, the rest of his body was unnaturally thin. The first trader vainly tried to pull back his expanding borders to fit within the chair. He said, No, you don't understand. It is only through the king's unceasing efforts on your behalf that you are able to argue with us in safety. If he, in all his wisdom, were to withdraw that support, woe unto you." Someone hollered, "Right, why don't you also tell us the riders have returned and you've each killed 100 elves? Do you think we're children to believe in your tales? We can take care of ourselves." The group chuckled. Trey started to reply when his thin companion intervened with a wave of his hand. Gaudy jewels flashed on his fingers. "You misunderstand. We know the Emperor cannot care for each of us personally as you may want, but it can keep Urgles and other abominations from overrunning this," he searched vaguely for the right term, place. Finally, the hour is ended. You can end this now and go listen to the Tucker Zone. It's not quite ended yet. It's 58:30. So I got a minute and a half. Let's see. The trader continued. "You're angry with the Empire for treating people unfairly. A legitimate concern. But a government cannot please everyone. There will inevitably be arguments and conflicts. However, the majority of us have nothing to complain about. Every country has some small group of malcontents who aren't satisfied with the balance of power." "Yeah," called a woman. "If you're willing to call the Varden small." Fatman sighed. "We already explained that the Varden have no interest in helping you. It's only a falsehood perpetuated by the traders in an attempt to disrupt the Empire and convince us that the real threat is inside, not outside our borders. All they want to do is overthrow the king and take possession of our land. They have spies everywhere as they prepare to invade. You never know who might be working for them." Eragon did not agree, but the trader's words were smooth and people were nodding. He stepped forward and said, "How do you know this?" "I can say that the clouds are green, but doesn't mean it's true. Prove you aren't lying." 2 men glared at him while the villagers waited silently for the reply. Or, for the answer, rather. The thin trader spoke first. He avoided Eragon's eyes. "Aren't your children taught respect? Or you let boys challenge men whenever they want to?" Listeners fidgeted and stared at Eragon. Then a man said, "Answer the question." "It's only common sense," said the fat one, sweat beading on his upper lip. His reply riled the villagers, and the dispute resumed. Eragon returned to the bar with a sour taste in his mouth. Never before met anyone who favored the Empire and tore down its enemies. There's deep-seated hatred of the Empire in Carvel Hall, almost hereditary in nature. The Empire never helped them during harsh years when they nearly starved, and its tax collectors were heartless. He felt justified in disagreeing with the traders regarding the King's mercy, but he did speculate about the Varden. Alright, see you later, Bether. Have a good night. Varden were a rebel group that constantly raided and attacked the Empire. It was a mystery who their leader was or who had formed them in the years following Galbatorix's rise to power over a century ago. The group had garnered much sympathy as they eluded Galbatorix's efforts to destroy them. Little was known about the Varden, except that if you were a fugitive and had to hide, or if you hated the Empire, they would accept you. The only problem was finding them. Morn leaned over the bar and said, "Incredible, isn't it? They're worse than vultures circling a dying animal. It's going to be trouble for it. There's going to be trouble if they stay much longer. For us or for them." "Them," said Morn, as angry voices filled the tavern. Eragon left from the argument, threatened to become violent. The door thudded shut behind them, cutting off the voices. Ugh. It was early evening, and the sun was... I can't speak. Alright, I think this is a good point to stop. And, cut off now. I'm on page 30 of it. I think that's a good spot. Right in the middle of the frickin' page. Oh, my tongue feels, like, swollen and, like, thick and heavy. Like, it's starting to get tough to actually continue speaking. Jeez, this is a lot harder than I thought it would be. A lot harder. And I already thought it was going to be difficult. So page 30. As soon as he left the tavern. Gotcha. Alright. I hope you guys enjoyed that. That was an interesting experience for sure, 100%. I kind of enjoyed it. It was nice to sit here and read from one of my favorite books for a little bit. Let's see. Thank you guys for watching the stream. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, and you're watching this in the future, be sure to go ahead and hit that like button over here on YouTube. Or if you disliked it, you can also hit that dislike button. Weren't my feelings too much. It's engagement. And lets me know what you guys actually thought of the video. Don't forget to also hit the subscribe button over here on YouTube in order to get notifications for I next upload a video, and also when I go live here on YouTube. And don't forget to hit that follow button over on Twitch, so that way you get notifications for when I go live over there. Oh, real quick on the note of YouTube and subscribing, be sure to hit that bell icon and hit all notifications to get notified for all things. You know, when I make a post in the community tab, asking you guys a question, or like a poll or something like that, and when I upload and live stream. Because... yeah, so that way you for sure get it, and YouTube doesn't screw you out of not getting that notification, because it could very well easily happen. What else, though? What else? Don't forget to share this stream highlight, or not stream highlight, this stream VOD on YouTube, if you're watching this, or stream VOD on social media. Wow, I'm all out of sorts, and tongue-tied, and thrown off after all of that talking. What else? I don't really have much else to say. Share this video on social media. Oh, check out the links down below in the description over here on YouTube. It has all sorts of stuff. Links to my social media, Twitch, my other YouTube channel, my Discord, where you can often find me chatting amongst the other members of the community. And it's where I'll post questions and links to videos and live streams for you all to get notifications for. What else? Don't forget to check out the panels down below over here on Twitch. It has the same information pretty much, plus or minus one or two things. And that's pretty much it. Oh, if you're watching this in the future, be sure to comment down below what you thought of it. And if you'd like to actually see me do more of this. Now, that's it for this stream. Hope you all enjoyed it. I had a fun, interesting time reading from Eragon. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Good night, everyone. I'm going to leave it on intermission stream for a little bit, though. Nice little ending, though. And you know what? Actually, on Twitch, I'm going to run a quick... where's the 30-second ad break? There it is. I'm going to run a 30-second ad. And there we go. Oh, alright. And once this ad ends, then I'm going to end off the stream. Alright, I'm gonna end this off now. Thank you guys for coming out to stream. Hope you all have a